From GMO Free Maui, if you're interested in stickers, you can have a bunch and take home and share. And mahalo po na enforce the GMO moratorium. And mahalo to all the voters of Maui, who actually, you know, it's all really important is our power and our power's administration to follow up. But if you have any questions, GMO Free Maui, you can find somebody right up there. All right, without further ado, we're going to roll. Put on your seatbelts. Let's move. I'd like to thank everybody again, Hawaii Studies, Kaimi, the whole Hawaii gang, Mauna, everybody for coming forward, all the students that came out, participated in the play. Mahalo Lloyd for making this event occur. Mahalo. Brother John, and again with the 2A, mahalo for the Papali over here. That I use over. Okay, so you know, as a teacher here at this college, I'm privileged, in fact, to talk about all this stuff all the time in my classes. So I'm very fortunate. Once a year, they let me out, and I can kind of say my own stuff out here at this particular event. And so, you know, in the past, I've looked at history, I've looked at many other kinds of questions. And so, for me today, I want to look at the question of education. And liberation education. And so, you ready to roll? Okay, so that's what my talk of is. Okay. Talk is cool. Re-Kalo-Nize. You have to re-Kalo-Nize. Of course, the root word kalo. And for me, it really is, you know, on multiple levels of class. Kalo as a symbol of our kupuna, our connection to this particular place, this land, that which sustains us and feeds us. To our elder brother, Halo, Nakalau, Kapalili. And the idea is that as a people, as Brother Walter was just saying, that identity, the Kalo and the Halo as our identity, was forcibly removed from us through the educational system. So we, as those today who have kind of reborn with this knowledge, in order to restore ourselves healthy, to restore ourselves of the right consciousness, we have to again put the Kalo and all that's attached to the Kalo, whether it's the narrative and the story and the history, whether it's actually the growing of the Kalo and the water on the land, and also, of course, the spiritual connection to this place in the center of our foundation. So, in a second, educate to liberate. So I'm going to try to move quickly. I have a lot of slides to kind of run through. And well, the question of course, Umao Ke'eo Kaine Kapono. And a life that which gives us that, you know, sustenance, the sovereignty, independence of his land. Has it continued on? That's the question we ask ourselves. So we talk about today self-determination, we talk sovereignty, we talk independence. To me, it's very simple. The lesson from our kupuna really is this question, which is the idea of air. You know, do we feed ourselves? Do we house ourselves? Do we control our own destiny? Do we design our educational system? Do we have the power to make sure we have clean water? Do we have the power to make sure we have access? Do we have the power to protect our sacred sites? And what is the answer to all of that? So good question. See, the point is, we think we don't have the power, but that power is latent. It's because we have gone asleep. So whenever we analyze a situation, like to quote Kwame Ture, and one of the things he says is that whenever you're going to talk about the people, whenever you're going to look at the so-called oppressed or the dominated, you have to have the right diagnosis, you have to have the right analysis. And the problem many times in analyzing the situation of people is that we have a false diagnosis. And as he said, of course, is that whenever you analyze the oppressed, you have to make sure you include in that analysis the role of the oppressor and the effects of oppression. Because if you fail to do that, you see, you end up blaming the oppressed for their own condition. You think it's about changing the Hawaiian. You think it's something wrong with the Hawaiian you gotta fix. But in reality, it's the oppression we have to fight against. It's the oppression we have to struggle against. It's the oppressor that we must confront. You're affecting my rhythm, Mama. Come on, So words I like to use, I say, we must confront issues. Yeah, I use the word secularism or colonial secularism, but the idea that we are settled people, and they determine through hegemony, through the power, through the influence, policies that affect our lives. Classic colonialism, where the idea that the political and the economic rule is not centered here, but in fact, we can go look away 5,000 miles away from a place like Washington, D.C. will determine effects on our lives. Coercive and forced assimilation, which are practices which transform and change a people. And Brother Walter was saying, to change your identity as Hawaiian to one where you become a stranger within your own land. Indoctrination, an idea of brainwashing, where they start to make you believe somehow, George Washington, that's the father of the country. And you start to believe in this indoctrination that somehow that history that is imposed on us is somehow our own. See, as Kwame Ture also said, the job of the oppressor and the dominator is to confuse the dominated, so they start to believe that the goals of the oppressor are the same goals of the oppressed. And you start to believe that what the dominator really wants is really what you want as the dominated. See, the first thing is to realize in this indoctrination is this myth-making, this storytelling, the images that pounded upon us for generations has nothing to do with empowering our people, but has everything to do with empowering them. At the same time, disempowering our people, so that we lose control, so we become apathetic. So we think we don't have a voice. So we believe we don't have power. Americanization, of course, we know through this history. Ethnic cleansing goes on even to this day. See, even if they come with a gun to remove you off your land, that's one kind of ethnic cleansing. But today they don't come with a gun. You see, they come with fancy briefcases and lawyers, and they come with money. But the effects are the same. Areas that we all know we grew up. We had many Hawaiians in that area at one time. They're no longer there. Yeah, whether it's the banks, whether it's the law, whatever is used, the end result occurs. Our people have been vanquished. Our people have been removed. Our people are no longer there. To me, that is ethnic cleansing. Whether it happens by the gun or it happens via the American dollar. Was the great professor of mine, Hamanike Trust, said, empire demands death. Empire demands death. And death is not just a physical death, but the death of our minds, the death of our culture, a death of a connection to this place. The idea that we must, in order to survive, as Brother Walter was saying, we had to kill who we are so that we could survive in a kind of schizophrenic way in this world. Yeah? So empire demands that the native no longer survives. See, the greatest voice that fights against empire is our voice in Hawaii. Now, one of the great minds of our people, Brother Skippy Ioana, that's the real Hawaiian philosopher over there. And, he has this brilliant line in one of his songs. The line goes, "Them got democracy, we got survive." And as someone, when I was a student back in political science, I blew my mind because of, wow, bro, that's political narrative. That's the counter-hegemonic, high-level kind of political philosophy. And basically what I say, you see, in the American system, they talk democracy. Because their whole mentality is about this idea of this kind of democratic movement. But you see, for our people, that's not our trajectory. That's not our political ideology. In fact, for us, it's about survival. The survival of our language, the survival of our way of life, the survival of our people still upon their land. So, the outcome, our journey is very different. And so even in their minds, they believe, hey, you can vote in our system. To them, that's good enough. But for us, that's not a reality. We know we're going to survive. That reality is death for us. That reality of assimilation means we will no longer be here. That reality means we will no longer be Hawaiians. So you got to understand that. So their language of democracy is not the same as our language of survival as a people. And so when we look at that language and power, this is the great Amos Wilson, who says there is a connection between naming and dominion. Yeah, the idea is that the power to name is the power. The fact that others define for us what is self-determination. The fact that others define to us what is sacred. The fact that an outsider can define for us what you can or cannot do. See, really is the power. They're holding the dictionary. But with this dictionary, so they can play with the words at all times. So we gotta understand, really the fight is about who has control of the definition, the power to define. Because to define is to hold dominion, to have control. So when we talk about language, and let me give you the example. When I say the word aina, everybody say aina. Everybody say real estate. Same thing. When our kids go to school, what do they learn? When they go to college, what do you learn? What is the language of this society imposed on us? What makes sense in this world but the language of real estate? To the point of when you understand, that's where consciousness begins. That's where the struggle begins. Because if you as a Hawaiian only understand real estate, it doesn't matter if you get sovereignty. It doesn't matter if you get control of your land. Because if you look at land as real estate, you can see where we're heading anyway. See, so the real fight is not just about we gotta get control of land. Because if we get control of the lands and we're still mindless as a people, we will end up in the same situation anyway. So the real fight is about re-educating our people to the true understanding of what Aina is. That's where the fight is. Second thing we should realize, Hawaiians are dominating people. We're a people in which we are dominated. It doesn't mean we don't have power to fight against this domination. But we gotta analyze the situation in the correct way. Now, if you may doubt this, but let's look at some facts. The fact that we have to resist this oppression, this subjugation, being domination, the fact that you gotta resist, sure, as they say, when it gets smoke, it's fire. The fact that Hawaiians gotta fight against things that are happening tells you that we are being dominated at this point. As the great George Helm from Molokai also said, call me a radical, for I refuse to remain idle. I will not have the foreigner prostitute the soul of my being. I will not make a whore out of my soul, my culture. In other words, we have to, there's no choice but to fight to protect the integrity of our culture. So we have to fight the integrity, the meaning of Aina for our kids, so the minds of our kids are no longer whitewashed to think of land as just real estate. Right.